Glory to you, O Lord.
Now when Jesus came to the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Well, some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Grace and peace in the name of our Lord and Savior. For those of you who don't know, I'm Fred Becker. I'm the pastor of Trinity Lutheran Church, and where I tend to preach, everybody's out there. So if I do this a lot, it's because I'm not going to say having all y'all back here. So I hope don't get seasick, I promise. So I am a second career pastor. I've only been doing this for about 10 years now. And before that, I was a camp director. I worked for the YMCA. And as a member of the staff of the Y in the Berkshires, our partner Y was in St. Petersburg, Russia. And in the year 2000, I was invited there to celebrate 100 years of the YMCA in Russia. Russia at that point was opening up to Westerners pretty well, and I got to spend an amazing 10 days there. St. Petersburg has a deep history. It was built by Peter the Great as an imperial capital looking to the west for its influence. To go there, you would say, this looks a lot like Philadelphia. The buildings are about the same age. The layout is the same, but everything is way bigger. There's canals everywhere. The plazas are huge, as befitting an imperial capital, versus being a colonial outpost that Philadelphia was. Given the amount of gold leaf on the outside of the buildings, and there was a lot, I can absolutely see why the revolution began there. Looking at all that and not being able to eat, yeah, I'd be one of them. But I think what I want to talk about here is that once the revolution happened, the Soviets renamed the city Leningrad. They stripped all the imperial references off the city and renamed the throne of the Tsars for a hero of the revolution. It served the purposes of the Communist Party. See, there's a lot in a name, and there's a lot in places. Places matter. So our first line of the gospel today tells us we're not in the borderlands anymore. We're back in Israel, and we are in a city that was created to honor a Roman emperor. And remember, Roman emperors were worshipped as gods. Caesarea Philippi, we read. An Israeli town that was taken over and renamed by King Philip for Emperor Augustus. You could also just think of it as King Philip's Caesar City. So where all the money-grubbing, influence-peddling of a national capital goes on. Think Washington, D.C., except in honor of an emperor who claims to be a god. And this is where Jesus goes to ask where or who people say he is. Now, you want to get a pastor on edge, start the conversation this way. You know, pastor, people are saying. You've heard that before? Of course you have. Anonymous scribes don't really serve anyone, but Jesus was going somewhere else here. He was making the point that the disciples know what people in the crowd are saying. And they see Jesus as a prophet. People in the world, people around Jesus, can see that what he does and what he says is different. And they have started to look to Jesus as an indication of God's intent for the world. But when Jesus asks, "Who do you say I am?" in the middle of King Philip's Caesar city, in the very town named for an emperor god and built by a petty king, yeah, that's a loaded question. And Peter rises to the occasion for all of us, as he often does. And Peter confesses to Jesus that he is the one everyone has been waiting for. God's chosen, the anointed, the Christ. This is an inflammatory and seditious claim in a city named for the Roman emperor. Jesus is God, Augustus is not. Now, whenever we confess our faith, which we will do in just a moment, those words can be just as incendiary. Jesus is Lord, not whatever is going on in Washington or Trenton. So, here's Peter, who for once gets it right. Next week he'll not, but right now, he got it right. And Jesus blesses him. "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it." Wow! But, and those of you from Trinity know where I'm going here, the Greek tells us something different. The word for rock in Greek is petros. So more accurately is, you are a rock, and on this rock I will build my congregation. A hopeful message as that may be, the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. There is one line that should draw us up short. On this rock, I will build my congregation. This is God's church, not ours. And Jesus is building it, not us. And I say this as I'm visiting another congregation. We have spent a couple weeks now worshiping together and socializing. And in the back of many minds in this room, I think some of us are thinking, what would joint ministry look like? The church that Jesus built was people. The cornerstone was a disciple. I keep thinking of a professional wrestler named Rock, but that's different. And this isn't for a lack of stones. There were stones all over. But we are the church. We follow a long and winding lineage all the way back to the disciples. And like most churches in the world, globally, we are shrinking. Losing members right and left, and no one has answers. But the world still needs us. On Friday, I presided at a very sad funeral for a young man. About 200 people, mostly young folks, crammed into our little building. Now, those of you who've been there know we don't have 200 seats. There were people standing all over the place. There's about 300 people who watched us online. It was a devastating and tragic event. But the church, and by that I mean the people of Trinity, held that grieving family together. The world still needs God and still needs the church, even young folks. People still need the church to support them and remind them of God's love. And that what we're doing here isn't the only part of the story. life and a relationship with God transcends our time here on earth. Our human limitations are not all that there is, and that's what the church reminds the world of. We need to remember that the church is not a building, but our very selves, and that it is God's church, the one that Jesus built. We're just the building blocks. So pay attention. Pay attention to where Jesus puts you as a building block. Pay attention to who Jesus puts you next to